Welcome to episode 25 of Paranormal Unwrapped with Krista Raisa and Jack Roth and Vivian Chalvet. Krista is a channel teacher and artist. Jack is an investigative journalist, author, and award-winning filmmaker. Vivian is an Arcturian hybrid, ambassador, spiritual teacher, speaker, and conscious channel. Today we are discussing the ET perception of the human race, and we want you guys to comment in the chat. If you are a member of this channel, I will know because you have a badge, so you get priority when it comes to Q&A. Welcome, everyone. Hard talk. Thank you.
Yeah. Today, Happy Universal Love Day. We call Valentine's Day. We would call it Universal Love Day.
Happy Finland Friendship Day.
Yay! Absolutely. Friendship, love, a network, sending everybody this beautiful energy. And then it's just not on today, but it's every day. So perfect.
Yeah, the world needs some love. I mean, what is going on? How do you know? Okay, I have a question here with this topic. We're talking about a whole entire planet. We're not talking about a continent, a country, a city, a little village, or even your block and your neighbors. How do you know what the whole temperature is of a planet? How do you test out the consciousness? What perspective are we approaching this, guys?
Well, I think a question that a lot of people always ask is, if the ETs are here and they are monitoring us, they are communicating with us, and they are even maybe, abducting us and, doing hybridization experiments. I mean, depending on the level of contact, whatever. But even if they're just observing us, what would they think of us of the human race, right? The inhabitants of planet Earth, what would they think? And the conversation that usually takes place right after that question is can sometimes get heated, but it's an interesting question because let's assume, like I know the three of us do, that they are here, they're monitoring us and probably doing a lot more than just that. So, and what do they think? Now, there's a couple things that I thought about. Now, you guys, obviously, you're connected to a specific ET race where you channel. So you're going to know specifically based on them what they think. So, but what I'd like to start is a broader discussion of, before we get to that, what would a race, okay, objectively speaking, think of humanity, think of the human race? If they were sitting here watch us for the last 500 years, what would they be thinking? So I think that, and I know everyone who's listening to this is going to have an opinion on that. They're going to be like, whatever they might think. And I know I might think a little differently on this than the two of you. I have a feeling. So we can just dive into it, like now, not the Arcturians and not the Orions yet, but in general, what would, if you were monitoring the planet for 500 years or 1,000 years, what would and you had to write a report, what would be in the report?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to me is, it's like asking, let's say, 100 people from different cultural backgrounds, from different places in the world, what do they think about children? Because we know that we all have conceived notion about what being a child is, whether you grew up in Japan, whether you grew up here in America, whether you grew up in anywhere in Europe or even on the African continent, there's a value, a foundation of how we perceive children, and there will be a variation depending on where you grew up and your perception. That's the first thing came to me. So without bringing the Arcturian perspective, which we will, and that we will, but for now, I'm going to hold myself, and then, I feel like I'm going to imagine myself that I'm this being, okay, and I came across your solar system, and especially the Earth, because she's emanating so much energy, so much thought, so much frequency. And I'm going like, okay, I'm interested. I've been studying the Earth for 500 years, which is a blink of an eye. Let's say 5,000 or let's say 500. And looking at overall, if you look at that, feeling the thoughts that are coming up, looking at the overall history without pointing a finger to any nations or city, like you said, or any place like that. It's not pointing fingers, but looking at a general broad generational, I'm looking at the globe and how people have been evolving consciously on this planet, you would see that it's a race. I would say, okay, here's an early stage race, maybe some spiritually like children. And of course, I say that with much love and respect. But it could be looking at a race with such an amazing potential, because looking at just our emotional faculties, it's huge what human beings have. It's not everywhere, I can tell you that. And looking at just the way the evolution has been gone through, I will also see a race of civilizations with amazing potential has been underdeveloped, kept, also convinced, programmed, manipulated. And I would see, looking at the core, because, beyond the persona, beyond the personality, beyond the behaviors, and then, we get to the labels, and then, oh my God, you flip me off on the road, you're a bad person, and things like that. A being, with whichever they come from, looking at the earth, they will see beyond those labels, beyond this physical, incarnation and playing out, and they would see, here's a race that has reached their full potential yet, but looking at what has been holding them back, looking at what has been going on through history, and we're not talking about the history in books that we teach in classes and that you can find online on the libraries. I'm talking into the real archives of a planet and looking at the way, people, a civilization globally has evolved. It's just too obvious. And I know I'm holding up not to bring in the Australian perspective. It's very challenging for me to kind of bring a generalization. But at the same time, you cannot help to feel that human beings are incredible, and they think that they're little gnomes walking around with, those Halloween costume on. To me, it's a little bit frustrating, because I'm like, hey, there's so much to you guys. So let's just take off the Halloween costumes and look at the real what's behind the costume, so to speak. And so that would be a general answer to your question to that. Does that make sense?
You. Yeah, that made a lot of sense. Krista?
My answer is neutral, as to not cause emotional disturbance in the field.
Nice.
We're going to end up talking about JFK at some point. So
no, we're not. Well, I promise. Well, actually, no. I might bring that up. But no. But seriously, do you? I mean, so you're kind of neutral on it because
well, from a scientific perspective of energy science, and if you look at the properties of energy and how energy moves, in a simplified way, energy moves as push, pull, stop. You can pull energy towards you, you can push it outward, or you just stop and you're neutral. However, there's some sort of interest. They would not be here or around if there were not some sort of curiosity, interest, or focusing. And so if we just start with that and come at it from an energy perspective, you're starting off at this sort of centered 0 point. You're just there, kind of like, okay, I'm on this planet, they're on that planet. So they have awareness. They have awareness that we exist. They're not unawares as to who we are. And it seems that they have knowledge about us. And so there's a form of intelligence, understanding concerning people. I can't say that all the ETs are developed and or some are not, because of the history. The history on this planet suggests that it's quite complicated interaction.
Right.
And So when you talk about perception, I'm thinking of their mind. And when you are talking about the mind, there's we can go in so many directions with the mind. And so I'd rather, I guess, answer this right from a science perspective than a sort of spiritual one, because there is some kind of feeling of influence when you talk about spirituality, and there's a lot of dichotomy with that topic.
Excellent. Wow, that is an extremely that is a very like an ambassador answer, like political, like that is very right. Like, and that's good. I think we need that because it's like, okay, well, let's look at it from a scientific standpoint. Sometimes I think we do need to. I guarantee you they are to an extent, some of the ET races that are quote unquote scientifically advanced and maybe don't have a lot of spiritual. We talk about the Greys being science, right? So that is, I love that. I didn't think you were going to, that's not what I thought you were going to say. So that's very cool. All right, I'm going to tell you guys what I think. And then I'm going to open up the floor to the two of you to talk about specifically the Arcturians and the Orions and what they have perhaps have observed in their time that they have been observing us, which is quite a while. I honestly, believe it or not, I feel like there's two sides to this. And Vivian, you brought it up because you're like, on the one hand, this, and on the other hand, that, right? We're like a child race, but with a ton of potential. If I'm looking at it from an objective standpoint, I'm looking at human beings and I'm thinking about, okay, we're coming from another planet. We're here to probably monitor and also make sure that things don't get out of hand, maybe with nuclear power, right? Nuclear weapons and destroying the planet. We have a vested interest in making sure that the planet's not destroyed. Let's assume that the ETs definitely have a vested interest in us and this planet. Okay. When I'm looking at the history of the human race, I'm seeing a very primitive, violent people. I'm seeing a very tribal people, a very easily manipulated people by their leaders. And Vivian, I know you brought that up, that we're kind of being held back, right, from our true potential by perhaps a very small percentage of the population, right? That's the leaders, people who are leading us. They're leading us down the wrong path. And this, interesting enough, is what Stan Romanek said when we did a regression with him, and he started receiving messages from whoever has been abducting him all these years. And he said the same exact thing. He said, your leaders are misleading you. They're guiding you in the wrong direction. And then when I asked, well, what's going to be done about that? Or why haven't you done anything about that already? And I thought of the question, and he answered the question looking at me before I even asked it. And I don't think I ever told you this. I knew the question in my head. I was about to ask it. He looked at me and he said, well, blah, blah, blah. He knew I was going to ask the question. It wasn't really Stan at that point. It was someone else. And they said they will be dealt with. I don't know what that meant. That could mean a lot of things. But I think that the people, so when I look at the human race, I agree with you, Vivian, that there's a lot of potential, but our track record is awful, from the standpoint of what we've been doing to each other since the beginning of humanity, since the beginning of, let's go back to early civilizations. We're brutal, very barbaric people. And yes, we have evolved in so many ways. But then if you look at, okay, where are we now then? If we've evolved, and why is the planet on the brink of serious problems? I watched a documentary last night about, it was called Save Jaws. It's a really good documentary. I recommend it. And it was about the shark fins, and they're hunting, their sharks are endangered now because in Asian countries, they're just hunting them for their fins and then throwing them back in the water to die. And it's just all because of money, and the people, upper class of people in China like to eat the shark fin soup. And when you see stuff like that, I don't know if I'd want to save a people like that. Or do you have to look at people individually? So I guess I bring it back to you guys and say, do you have to look at the individual, or do they have to look at it as a human race? How do they look at it?
Well, you're bringing very profound. There's very deep layers to what you bring up. So the answer we provide earlier and the answer Krista provided, it really is a complementary of a corn, so to speak. Because take a bag of apple. If you look at the property, the natural nutritional benefit of an apple, and they know it's extremely rich in just vitamin C, for example, and it really promotes the digestive enzymes. It boosts your system. It cleanses your system. It is a wonder of nature. We can agree about that. An apple is a wonder of nature that is provided to us. And then you grab some bags of apple, you mix and match. You have some reds or green, some different tastes, some sour, some sweet, and all the whole 9 yards. You put them in one big bag labeled as apple. And then if you then, depending on where you lay the bag, if you carefully lay the bag in an environment that will be conducive to keep the apple fresh, then all of the variety will grow and be preserved with ease and grace. But if you're just throwing on the counter and you forget it because you're too busy and it starts to rot, you look at your bag and you go like, oh, they're all bad. And then they need to be thrown away. So why am I talking about apple? What does it make sense here? It's the same thing here. So we're looking at souls who came on to incarnating into a human form, embodying a human, behaving as such within their levels. And is there some level of bad apple, so to speak? Oh my goodness, yes. Even the Federation, the Galactic Federation agrees there's a seat for humanity to take their rightful place, but it has to be heard. It has to be shown that there is a very constant, potent consciousness evolution in order to do so. So let's go back to the apple bags. Yes, what you're describing, I felt my heart sinking like 15 octaves down the chart. And my team says you're allowing your heart center to be pulled up and down, because you can feel right away my compassionate side. I can feel the shark energy in their consciousness. So you got me right there. So yes, these type of behavior in disregard to sentient life, including their own, and also non-reverence for life and evolution, and also to recognize that all life is sacred. This type of behavior and paradigm can no longer be supported. And on that, Jack, believe me, the entire collective says, yes, we all are on the same agreement. But if you look at the origin of the question, the origin of this amazing topic today, ET perception of the human race, and we talked about looking at just the variety, how many different civilizations of ET there are, and how many different cultural background and different civilizations growing and expanding on the planet. It's very diversified. So you will have grays, the gray consciousness, for example, or they may be more scientists. To them, there will be their definition of morality and emotions have a complete different concept. And so therefore a need to preserve a civilization and human being has compatible, and is so much more complex behind it. But just to keep it very, very simple, their approach will look like scientists. Their approach will look like they're detached. Their approach will shock and also cause trauma, because here, as you evolve as a human, well, we have morality. We have concept of how to approach each other, protocol of communication, protocol of respecting each other. I'm not going to go to see Krista says, hey, I like your hair. I'm going to just cut a piece and that's it without asking you. I will not do that, because we have those protocols, and you're going to go like, hey, stay away from me, right? Exactly. But I said that because I think your hair is beautiful. So it's something we can relate to. See?
They love you.
Exactly. Thank you.
Feeling like a samurai.
Exactly. But it's the same thing. And so just to wrap up quickly, we can definitely dive in terms of bad apples, where they come from, how was it allowed in the first place, how we going to get to that point. In addition to that, we're going to add the different perception from different civilizations. The Pleiadians are viewing the human race very different from the Greys, different from the Draconian, different from the Arcturian, and of course the Orion Council and the Syrian. And of course, I need to drop the Andromedan in there because they're amazing. But just to name a few, right there we have so much to even look, illustrate, give example, and I feel that it's going to not only answer a lot of subtlety of questions, but also make a really good statement in terms of what is perception, from what level of consciousness, what is your perception, your filters, what is the aspect you're approaching. Scientific, it's great. At the same time, remember that a very enlightened civilization will have a balance between spiritual consciousness and what you call scientific information and scientific approach. It has to be balanced. It's not one or the other, and we know that.
Can I go, guys?
That's great.
Yeah,
No, absolutely.
So excited. I'm just feeling so excited. My heart is palpitating fast. I don't know why. But yeah, I don't know if this is really Orion Council perspective. It's when you're fusing your consciousness with a group consciousness, and you do this every month, or perhaps you contain some sort of ET genetics. There's no way of really separating yourself from your team or your star family once that connection has been fused. So, but I am speaking for myself and what I've learned on this planet. So I have a question and a point. Still sticking with the science. However, it's a spiritual science, maybe. The question is, what about what humans or the spirit of Earth, Gaia, if Gaia exists? Because Orion Council talks about Gaia. What is Gaia broadcasting about humans? What are humans broadcasting to the cosmos at nighttime, in the dream time, if we are having an astral body that projects every night, and upon waking we are not so conscious as to what has happened? What are we actually communicating from the human perspective out to them? What is our energy field saying? They can see aura colors, holograms, all sorts of layers to our body, some of the ET. And when you talk about the different races, I know people have been concerned about draconians and snake people and so on. Some of them, from what I've learned, is including also Cassiopeians, the mantids, and many other kinds of some are very ancient in this galaxy, and they've had their kind on this planet, and so it's kind of like they want a piece. They want to put their stakes up because they've added to the gene pool here, and so this is why we talk about councils. But anyways, going back to the other sciences, a couple of years back, I was out in nature and I consumed a very small dose of psilocybin mushroom. As a sensitive person, it worked. I saw mandalas, I saw these turtles in the sky, and felt like I could fly after getting through this sort of fear barrier. And what happens with the mushroom is the harmine molecule binds to your DNA, RNA receptors. And according to Terence McKenna, you begin oscillating fifth dimensionally because of the alchemy. And Stanford now suggests that the fungal kingdom actually gives you information. So if you look at a fern genome, it has thousands of, or excuse me, it has lots more chromosomes than we do. It's like over 1,000 chromosome. We have 23. So there's an intelligence to the plant kingdom, and Orion Council has mentioned that intelligence. And this is why I'm saying, okay, what about, we have a lot of the human perspective, but what do the plants have to say about, what are the fairies reporting about humans? It's a living library here, and there's a lot of consciousness. There's spirits here who have an opinion. So there's a whole bunch of life that must create some sort of standard that is known in the galaxy. And I think that that's what we're communicating as channels, is how they see us, so that we can have a peaceful contact. And so considering that plants or fungi can talk to you, what it told me was, it told me that we are allowed to be here. And that means you might not get invited back to this planet. It's not a guarantee that you reincarnate here. So considering that we are all somehow important, I cannot imagine a higher source allowing life to evolve if it wasn't somehow special, it wasn't somehow divine on a very deep level.
Precisely. That's exactly it. So it goes back to identifying ourselves to our divine celestial self. You are on the planet in incarnation in the physical body. It's because not only it was allowed, aligned, and well received, it's because you bring something absolutely unique and needed to, especially at this point where we are the stake of, we call it ascension. From our galactic perspective, we call it a reascension, but we are together at a point of time where the evolution of the human race has taken a very, very specific turns. And the very fact that this podcast exists and we're having this conversation between ourselves, broadcasting out to the world, is because there's also a receiver and there's a need out there. So we are in alignment into addressing needs. We talk about the elemental, which I think they're amazing. The fairy kingdom, the gnome kingdom, the plant people, the stone people, and all of this consciousness evolving. Think of it as a very complex ecosystem from which we are in part of, and we're playing a very intricate part in this ecosystem. The synergy that we are creating consciously, physically, just your presence, just the fact that you are observing, the observer phenomenon, that you're also altering your environment. This is why we're going back to again and repeating again and again and again, and we're going back more to the fundamentals, the essentials, understanding who you are, remembering that you have embodied a human personality and a physical form, because as your essence, as your divine essence, you are experimenting life through physicality, and you are in physical expression, evolving physically, emotionally, spiritually, consciously, and all of the above within a very intricate ecosystem. And then those systems, so to say, those layers are part of what you just said, with a different life form, different frequency, different consciousness, the way you even just eat a carrot, for example. Everything has an interconnection. So the word perception or opinion, it's very human based, because, if you ask a plant or a fairy, what do you think about me? It may not fully understand what you think, more like how you perceive me, in terms of how do you perceive my energy, how do you perceive, this behavior, or this, how could I say that? How I'm interacting with you within your ecosystem, within a forest or within a field, and how my energy is affecting theirs, and versus versa. So we can look in terms of other group consciousness, like ET Bays, whether it's Orion, but look at the Pleiadians. If you were to ask the Pleiadians, how do you perceive the human race? They would probably say, well, they're part of our family. And as part of a family, we feel responsible. We feel that it is part of our duty, our choice that they make to help us to evolve. And the DNA pool, and they're very involved in this, because they did contribute to the DNA. They did contribute to the evolution of the human race. I mean, look how fast the human civilization has evolved. Even if you look throughout history, the evolution has been accelerated rate, which is not normal according to the natural law, based on science and Darwin theory and all of this. It transcends all of this. And so the Pleiadians, for example, would have a very precise way of perceiving human beings, because they see us, they see human beings as their first cousins, their direct family with their DNA gene that we're holding in ourselves. And there's so many out there in terms of group consciousness that have been involving and interacting with us. So the word perception can be put a little bit more larger, a little bit more on a broader spectrum in terms of if we put ourselves, or if you put your shoes in the shoes of group consciousness, I have a different way of perceiving you, even to your light. They may not even see all physically. Some group consciousness are evolving. They're so high that what they see is our light. They see our vibration. They see we are in our essence. They don't really see, here's a human form, and then I can see their deeds and non-deeds and what they've done, their karma. They see beyond that. So it's very complex, very, very complex.
I have a question. Guess question.
Yeah.
People talk about different timelines and different realities, but also creating your reality. And my question is, what timeline are we in? Because all of us here now are in a sort of a shared experience. Is there a timeline where Earth ascends, we have open contact? Does that exist? How do we get there? And are we responsible for other timelines where, humans just destroy everything? Or because people talk about ascension and the ETs also talk about these third dimensional people not wanting to ascend and going into another third dimensional timeline. But the Orion Council keeps talking about the planet actually itself ascending. So it kind of seems like a show here. It seems like a show. They say there are millions of eyes watching us here. What do you think?
All right. That's a good question. I mean, you mentioned that there might be different timelines where one might be this where we destroy the planet. One is where we don't, right? Where we get past the hump, so to speak. But here's my question to you guys. Evidence suggests, and we know through the historical record of UFO sightings, okay, if we go back to right after we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, that's when this modern era of UFO sightings began. That after that, starting in about 1945, moving forward, that they all of a sudden, that's when people really started seeing a lot of UFOs. They were all over the place. And then people started having the abduction experiences. And during the abduction experiences, a lot of people say that they're shown this one reality where the planet is destroyed. A lot of abductees are shown this, and they're told basically get your shit together, because a lot of abductees, when we put them on in front of the camera, will say, yeah, I was shown this and it was scary, but it's only one alternative and we can change that. But that's one thing that will happen if we don't stop. So I guess my question is this. Yes, there is that side of it where it's what we are as a spiritual and our evolution spiritually, and what our essence is, right? When we talked last week about our deepest truth. So who we were essentially. But if we blow up a city in Hiroshima with nuclear weapons, it caught their attention. And then and I don't know what ET races started really bringing it on as far as we need to watch you. And when I did research for that one book that I wrote about the former military guy who worked at a missile where there were nuclear missiles. So he worked at an Air Force base down in Miami and Key West. So during the Cold War, there were UFO sightings. Robert Salas, all these guys who wrote these books, they were there when these UFOs would fly over these bases and completely disarm our nuclear armaments, our nuclear missiles. And it was like a message saying, hey, we're not going to let you do this. There's no way you're destroying this planet in a nuclear holocaust, and it's not happening, which is why I've never feared one. Truthfully, I don't think it's ever going to happen, even if North Korea decided to launch every one of their missiles, they wouldn't be able to launch them because the ETs would stop it. I truly believe that, because they won't allow us to do that. But having said that, it's like having that bratty little toddler in your house who keeps touching all the toys and breaking your lamps, doing stuff like that. And you have to keep a constant eye on them, constant eye, right? Otherwise, they're going to get in trouble. So it's like, I honestly, how could we not be described that way? And if I'm an ET and I'm having to watch, I'm watching you guys, and I'm saying, better not launch those missiles today. You want to talk child, like you mentioned, there's we're an early stage race. I mean, if that doesn't describe that, I don't know what does. So I guess my point is, if we're being shown that our destructive, what could happen because of our destructive nature, that side of it. So the ETs have to be cognizant of this. They have to understand that we're capable of doing damage, not only to this planet, but maybe there's a ripple effect across the universe.
Yes. Yes, there is. Same thing with your thought forms. All the thoughts that are emanating from the planet creates ripple effect. And you think about ET watching about a Holocaust and nuclear bomb, they also started to constantly have to clear those wavelengths of thought form coming from the Earth, because they do affect other planets. The Earth is not the only planet. I should say the human race and the Earth are not the only places in the universe that are in the same level of consciousness, evolving through third density and higher. I know because part of our collective are been deployed to different places, so we can see the correlation how the Earth and all the civilizations here is evolving in parallel with other worlds. And oddly enough, maybe to your mind, is that the success of what we're doing is also going to lead the way for these other planets who are also stuck, so to speak, in third density, I mean. And so, yes, these are the facts in terms of, if you look in the Roswell crash, 1947, the moment that nuclear bombs start to be predominant on the horizon, and this childish behavior to go like, I don't like your country, I'm going to bomb you, and so beyond. But you have to think about also there's masters ascended, incarnate on the planet. They are very old souls. Now, Cryon speak of the old souls on the planet, those who are not maybe the famous one or not the famous book author, and they don't tour the world, they tell me yes, it just got a big yes. But you have to think about, yes, because they flash. But the thing is, those old souls who are in incarnation, who have been allowed to come, who have been coming to here with very specific predisposition to bring and change the types of events. So when we talk about earlier timelines and what the abductees have been shown with certain different civilizations, ET civilizations, so it's like looking at your hands. There was a time where we were maybe going to that timeline, and the potential raised to the point that they can see that the only outcome would be that the planet would have been destroyed. And the Earth, in its way, her capability to sustain such diversity of life forms, it's far too precious to be wasted in the name of one civilization, or let's say a few civilizations, because there's more than the human beings on the planet, and we know that. So that timeline has already been diverted, and now we may be here right now. And then that timeline also says that there's enough people, everyday people, and that word makes me laugh and makes me smile. What is an ordinary people? What is an everyday people? I call them the powerful people, because oftentimes they're the ones who bring more consciousness, change their diet, start to understand that eating animals may be not the way anymore. We've been programmed to believe that the body needs meat, which is not the case. Living more in sync with nature, accepting the elementals. I have friends who they are caretaker for a beautiful ranch, and they work with the elemental and the spirit of trees, and they are very conscious that they're the one holding a space, and their piece of that earth is sacred. Look at the Native Americans, look at different civilizations, cultural civilizations throughout the planet, through history. And we're not talking just about the famous one like the Incas and the Mayans. We're talking about, cultural. Some tribes are still holding a space for the planet, preserving, being able to be in sync with the pulse and the rhythm of nature and working with the grits, the line lime, and all of it. So you have to think about what is the forces behind it. And I like a lot what you mentioned earlier, Krista, when you said, what does human being convey? What kind of message, what kind of perception, what kind of energy do we portray out there? And it's perceived from different council, the federations, group consciousness, beings that exist and vibrate in different form that we can only imagine, and so forth, right? So you have to think about, there are what's called the child ones, and those who are, I'm in power because my title says president, because my title said so. I have the power to reshape the face of the earth as I please. But these type of paradigm, it's really shifting, because behind it there's a much bigger force that we call the ordinary people, those who are awakening, those who are asking questions, those who are, investigating, and to say, wait a minute here. We need to choose and utilize our free will differently. We need to choose again. We've been convinced to choose in a certain way, or being guided, like you said, Jack, have been guided to convince, hey, if you put your power in here, it will be fantastic, you'll be happy, but you're being distracted where much more is going on behind the scene. We have to factor in that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, both on the planet, through the influences. One other thing I can tell you in terms of ET perception to the human race, is that human being, its core, in its origin, is a race of peace. It's not a violent race. It's not a race that is prone for war and destruction. But if you look at all the DNA manipulation, also all the convincing, those who've come behind the scene, putting, child puppet, terms into government leaders and whatever title, even scientists, scientists to say, oh, the junk DNA, just forget about it. I'm sorry, but that's not science to me. That is blind science. That is science that just convince you just to look at your pinky, forget you have 4 other fingers. And I'm like, what is this?
Right.
And so,
right.
Last time we were talking about the development of animals, although they're in their separate kingdom, as are elementals and humans. But not too long ago, we talked about Darwinism and humans coming from apes, and that was just the basic understanding here. But now more and more evidence suggests that there have been ancient astronauts visiting and influencing the genetics of the beings of this planet. And if you look at it from a perspective of, is this an animalistic behavior? What is the reverse of the animalistic behavior of barbarism and cannibalism? just these sorts of things. We're looking at what Jack mentioned, you mentioned last time, which is being a caregiver, sort of like a custodian, a self-aware being, which is a garden keeper, because we are the ones who water the plants, make them grow, et cetera, create food and things like that. And these new children who are being born here, displaying these incredible abilities, which Mary Rodwell has for years been reporting, trying to get her foot through the door with MUFON, male-dominated groups, UFO groups, who are so concerned about the well-being of this planet. As a woman who has interviewed one by one these children because she's safe and she's a nurse, and people open up to her, has gathered priceless information. So also the Free Society, in which these kids are doing and saying and experiencing amazing stuff. And she explains this as Homo novus and now Homo noeticus. And so with the extraterrestrial who is observing us possibly from spacecraft or other planet shows an advancement in intelligence. To say, on a basic level, there's been an advancement where they are not sitting with little wooden bowls, banging on stuff and being like animals. They wouldn't be having complex space travel, let alone telepathy. And so if you look at it like this, whether it's from children to adult or from animal to Homo noeticus, there is some sort of evolution that has happened, which is why this is such a wonderful topic. We could continue and go on and on about, but we're basically establishing communication. We're communicating with advanced beings. We're not communicating with simple life forms. And this is totally different from your crystals or your plants or your mushrooms talking to you, or your ant, and the ant people are also beings.
And people.
So anyway, you get my point. Yeah.
It really is, and I like that. So look at nature. Nature is shifting. There's been so many reports of, I don't know, a lion adopting a gazelle baby and then being part of the tribe, and then a wolf will take some kittens that she found and then feed them, and they become part of, and the behavior, they're adapting. The kittens become imprinted with this wolf female and say, well, you're the mother, so I'm going to, be part of your energy. I'm going to mimic your behavior and be part of it. The coexistence of many, many animal species, where the cliche go like, well, lions eat gazelle and then wolf or eat kittens and stuff like that. It's part of this very old barbarian paradigm that has brought here to the planet by other ET civilizations, like a portion of the draconian, a portion of the reptilians. And I say a portion because my goal is to prevent condemning an entire civilization. There are those who have evolved and no longer wish to partake to the same paradigm. The same thing with human beings. We cannot condemn an entire civilizations, but a handful of those who are clinging on to ego, to self-service, and also at the expenses of the planet, where we know that we cannot be blind to it anymore, that there are deeper influence behind it. They're right here on the planet. It's been shown in history. I forgot which airport. I think it's, and forgive me, I really forgot the name, but I think it's the Denver airport, where it's been shown documentary and research that there's a huge underground facilities, and even their restroom or their rooms as like, it's designed for very, very large and tall beings that has nothing to do with the human being. And it's right there. So, we have to also understand that there's much more to those behaviors. When we see someone like in president or in charge of an entire nation, and whichever nation that is, and then it start to behave in a certain way, you have to think yourself, is it just childish behavior, selfish, completely ego-based, or is there much more to it? That person could have been naturally prone to this kind of behavior to begin with, more influential in that sense, yes. But at the same time, you have to think about what will make me, as the representative of an entire nation, push a little button because I don't like my neighbors and you'd refuse to bow to my demands, and I'm going to go poof, and then other countries are gone and I'm going to destroy 1/3 of the earth. You have to think about it. This is good food for thought. We talked about ET perception, but there's also ET influence. There's also other type of influences. They're out there. There's much more to it. I mean, we're talking about really heavy duty stuff here in terms of influence. And it's been shown, documented even into scientific ways that there are influences. It's not just, where does that thought or that behavior come from? That's very interesting too. What is the real source of it that led to the extremity of a war, that led to behaving in a way that we see some representative governing? I mean, we don't talk about a 3D behavior. I mean, the last state of the last time the President Trump spoke, I think it's called the State of Affair. We address
State of the Union.
Thank you, State of the Union, and then we can look in the background, and then their House of Representatives is right there, and you can tell that that person doesn't give a hoot about what's going on, and it's been all over the news. But you have to think about what is going through that mind of that person. And I said no name. We all know who that is, but I said no name. What came to that mind? What thought, what influence came to that mind to display a behavior that was speaking volume, and also that was also creating an environment, creating an impact during a nationwide event? So what is the purpose behind that behavior? What is it really you're trying to, what message or perception they want to send out? And honestly, when I look at it, I just go blessed with light, because I can tell that it is so old and outdated that it has no longer a place from where we are right now and we're moving into. And it's like, you know what? You remember, choose again. You don't like something, you don't feel right about something, choose again. Utilize your free will to go, I'm going to redirect that energy, that intention, my energy, my time, my thoughts, my co-creative power of who I am in my expression, to be an instrument of the light, to be an instrument to make a difference for this world. And it can be as easy as filtering out your thoughts on a daily basis. And we talked about it before, but these are so important that it has to be brought again and again. Why? Because it creates a new rhythm. It creates an imprint. And what we think, in school, when we teach a language to people of all ages, even children, young adults, whatever age you are, when you teach something, a new concept to someone, it has to be done to repetition. Because to repetition, it creates an imprint. It creates a new way of incorporating, and it become more natural. So it override the old paradigm and start to create a new one. And so there's multiple layers to it. And I know we can dig, but at the same time, perception is as fluid, as large as an ever-flowing river, because depending on your angle, where you're coming from which perspective you come. Yes, sorry, they're talking to me. And then also from one influence you bring, it can be, like I said, and that's what it's showing me, like a river, like a river flow of light, of pure energy that's just flow. So it's an invitation to remain fluid and open. Right?
Yeah, it's heavy stuff, right? I mean, it's, just on a basic level of us trying to understand ourselves, right? For us to try to understand human nature. As a good friend of mine recently was just flabbergasted. He was like, why? He kept asking why. Why would human beings, any human being at this point, deny climate change? Why? Why would they, at the very least, not want to play it safe and make sure that we're not affecting the environment in a negative way? And it boggles the mind. You sit there and you're like, I don't understand how. It just doesn't make any sense. But it's like you said, Vivian, well, where does that come from? Where does you've seen people stand up and say, oh, there's nothing wrong. We're not doing anything wrong to the planet, where all this evidence is obviously overwhelming that we need to do something. We are all custodians of this planet and we need to act together and protect it. Why wouldn't you want to? Now, I could say easily, well, that's greed. It's about money. They want to make money. But don't they have kids and grandkids?
It's called avoid and deny. The Orion Council, in a really loving way, was inspiring the listener to take inspired action. And especially in our spiritual community, a lot of people have gotten to the point of investigating who they are. They've gotten a couple psychic readings. They've had some unusual experiences, and they feel on some level that they are important, that they are, or were important in a past life, or have some sort of merit in the spiritual hierarchy. And if that's true, how does your status in the universe translate in your love and action? What do you do every single day? What is your practice that is a selfless practice, that is a true heart's desire to move something? Because when you're stuck in a depression, you're not having a lot of energy momentum. Stop, push, pull, stop. Your energy's kind of stopped. You're just laying there. And something's obviously going on. The Ryan Council says things are always going on. We're flickering in and out of this dimension. But when you are angry, there's more of a momentum behind your spirit, your being. And when you're sad, you're less erratic. It's like you're more of that river of consciousness. But when you're getting into lighter emotions like a gentle frustration, eventually hope, which is a step up to get to those really high emotions that have a lot of momentum and a huge effect on other people and on the earth, you eventually start going into higher bliss states of love and gratitude, things like that. There's a process. It's a development of yourself, and it's very easy now, because we were talking about the last 500 years, it's very easy for us now to step outside of ourselves in this society, so that when we talk about the manipulation of these groups that make it so difficult for us, is they make it very magnetically attractive to manipulate us emotionally to respond to stuff. So when they're reporting on the shark things and all of this stuff, and you have to look at why does the news constantly pump out, oh my God, this is bad. Oh my God, this is bad. Why don't these news articles have the solution? Why doesn't the writer and the journalist, where's the end point? In school, we had to learn, right? In science, you have a scientific method. What is it you're looking for? What do you think is going to happen? What's your evidence? What is your conclusion? There's often, it's a lot of it, at least in the United States. That's why I recommend people we read international news, because in the United States, there's a lot of highly charged emotional opinions. Denzel Washington calls social media opinionation. And the young people are fully in it, the 20-somethings. It's all about your looks and what's the latest hype and how cool are you, how much money, are you potential money maker, all of these things. And, when you truly want to be successful, my partner, Arctur, he always says you have to look at what no one else is looking at. And it's that little guy in the corner, somewhere, maybe in a truck in the middle of nowhere, who's inventing something that's going to change the world. And no one's looking at that. Keshe Foundation shows how to create with anode and cathode, and I interviewed Byington Sims on this channel, is how you can create a plasma water, which is healing this coronavirus. But does anybody Google or look on YouTube how to heal coronavirus? How to prevent is like, right? It's like it's our mind state as well. It's our very thoughts that Vivian keeps saying, is our thoughts are affecting everything. And if you are in the mass consciousness, you are very easily taken outside of yourself. You're not necessarily being a leader. You're being a part of the masses. And so that's what I believe has been taught here the past 500 years, is if you're a danger to the controllers, if you're an independent critical thinker, an artist,
right,
a manager. And there's a lot of information that have come from ETs that has also been manipulated. So when people are saying it's the quarantine prison planet, We talked about this before. We've got to end soon, but you also have to think, okay, is that information correct? Has that information that the ET originally gave, has that also been manipulated? Why would the ETs go through so much trouble to help us if there wasn't something to save or something to elevate? If hope was lost, what would you do if you were a advanced being and all hope was lost? Then you'd be like, oh well, all hope is lost. Have fun. I mean,
Right. But don't we all have a responsibility, like you're talking about, like we're manipulated, we're so easily manipulated. That's not a good quality. I mean, don't we all have a responsibility to stand up to and say, okay, look, the few that are controlling the many and are manipulating the many, as a human race, we need to stop this. We are responsible for this, so we can't depend on ET races to come and rescue us. Right. So I always ask that question. I asked it of Stan during the regard. Well, we can't, how are we supposed to, we need to stand up to these few, right, and change things. And if we don't change things, aren't we all culpable? Aren't we all responsible? And again, that is a perception of the human race. One of the perceptions of the human race is that we're easily manipulated and we can be brainwashed and we're a bunch of sheep, that 90% of us would just walk around and fall off a cliff if someone told us to fall off a cliff. I don't know the answers to this, but that's my point, though, is that when you're looking at this, it's like, wow, take responsibility for the things that your government is doing, or this one lunatic leader is doing, or this small group of people in Asia that like to have shark fin soup. Well, guess what? You can't eat shark fin soup anymore. You can't. We're not going to allow you to. Why isn't anyone stopping any of this? And I have to think that looks poorly on us. I would be like, oh man, why don't they just, or when are they going to get to the point where they can turn this around, right? Have that paradigm shift, enough of a paradigm shift to stop the people who are trying to control them and lead them down the wrong path and turn things around. I mean, that's practical. That's just a practical thought.
We already in it. One word comes to us is fear. Look at how ingenious the paradigm, the construct of fear has been integrated into our world, into our mind, in everything. Just that one alone. I mean, I just came back from Sedona when I took a very intense initiation in the next level of universal healing. And I have these couple in front of me, heart-based people, dedicated, nurse and customer service, the heart center just glow. And you can see the fear in their eyes. But not everybody's ready. Ready for what? Ready to say, you know what? It's like you said, Jack. I no longer partake to this. I no longer accept this. I no longer become a peon in the pot because of fear. So this very ingenious, illusionary paradigm that has been intricate, weaved into the planet, and for generation, it's fear. Can you imagine, just for one moment, living one day, what we call even a holy minute? You can hold one holy minute where you are completely without fear. And it's the fear of the fear itself. So that's one is just big alone. And so that one alone would create a reversal of thought system, of thought process, of perception. It's like the veil is lifted. You go like, oh my God, I just woke up from the weirdest, intense dream ever. And so same thing when you dream. There's time when you become lucid in your dreams, right? And you start to realize, go, look, wait a minute. I'm wearing my pajamas and I'm in the jungle of something and I'm being chased after a bunch of tribe and wolves. No, this is a dream and I take control over it. And suddenly you are without fear, right? And then it has happened to me when I was in that dream and I'm like, I'm wearing my pajamas. This is what I do when I go to bed. I said, no, you don't trick me. I'm in a paradigm. I know. And I took it over. And then when I woke up, I'm like, okay, that was a good exercise to show me they can do the same thing here. But that paradigm, and that what we call that illusionary paradigm of fear itself, when I ask people, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid to be afraid. Fear of the fear itself. And that one alone has been brought on, whatever that is, has been brought on the planet in ways it's just like, let's do this. Let's do this universal, let's do this planetary experiment. We start by one moment, what's called a sacred moment, a minute. When you get in your space from wherever you are, whichever your time zone is, you sit down on the chair or you're laying down and you say, for a moment only, what's called a sacred minute. For that minute, 60 seconds on the clock, I'm entering my space. I trade fear and all the roots and the subroots that fear creates, everything. And instead I invite complete peace. I am at peace with myself for 60 seconds, that sacred minute. And then doing it maybe 7 to 10 days in a row. And then moving into graduating one day, 24 hours of walking, living, breathing without any form of fear. And then you start to change your life. You start to create miracles. You start to influence others. You start to be responsible for your thoughts, your emotions, your conscious evolution. You choose differently. You see differently. In shamanism, they call it dream the world into being. And, even Alberto Villoldo from the Four Winds Society speak of it when he spent years everywhere in Amazon with sacred tribes in Peru, with the descendant of the Incas, to dream the world into being. This is the responsibility of the steward of the earth, the custodian, what we are here for. And from there, with the earth and all life form, when we talk about our life form, we talk about also invisible one, the kingdom, elemental, all there is, evolution, life and expression. You start to walk more hand in hand. And then everything that you do, just to get out of the road without having to feel rage, anger, frustration. Yeah, you will feel somebody cut you off. It's not pleasant. But at the same time, it will lessen your response. It will lessen the anger you put out there, because that anger creates a ripple effect and it spreads out. And so that we wonder why we come back home after a day and we're exhausted. We feel low. We don't have patience for spirituality. We don't have patience for anything because we're exhausted. But yeah, it's like your energy is filtering out everywhere. And same thing with the HeartMath Institute, where they teach you to build resilience, build coherence, to be able to work more with the intelligence of your heart. It is scientifically proven how much there's more brain cell in your heart than is the brain itself. And so, like Krista said earlier, which we explicitly agree with, it's that everything in the media is designed to play and pull on your heart, because there's so much power and intelligence there that while you are too busy having your heart being pulled in all directions, you feel so bad, your vibration lowers, you get angry, and you feed the exact same paradigm that they're holding on to. And I say they in a very large, very broadened perspective. Right?
Right. Good stuff.
Good stuff indeed.
Yeah, I feel like, and again, these topics, they're like branch out, right? With all these other tentacles that we can talk about on other shows, obviously. But this is good. This is good stuff. Krista, what do you think? Like, this is, it gets in the whole idea of human nature and humanity, and what kind of influences are we having on us that are maybe affecting the way that we behave, and what part of it is just innate human nature, right? I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on here on Earth. and there are a lot of people here right now on this planet. But the main point, what we are here fearlessly demonstrating, which why I'm so grateful to you, Jack and Vivian, is you guys have been in this game for so long. You've been public about it. You've been talking about it. And that's what we need so much, for people to share and use their own resources, their own intelligence, skill, bravery, and exemplary behavior as galactic ambassadors here. So thank you so much for your service, and thanks to everyone else who've contributed to this amazing energy together. It's because of people like you that the change is happening, and maybe we'll just have some miso soup for lunch today. So I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy your Valentine's Day. So we'll see you in the next episode.
See you soon.